Eric Adams and Kathy Hochul, you have failed this city. Coming to paperback and e-readers, Esteem Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this all-new Esteem series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Esteem Horror in the Hamptons in digital format at Amazon.com, Google Play, Draft the Digital, and other digital booksellers, or pick up your paperback copy on May 24th. A subway rider disarmed and shot a fare beater who started a fight with him on an A train in Brooklyn.
Now to the subway shooting. Passengers were frightened. A man shot with his own gun. Ariel Reshef joins us live outside the New York City subway where it all happened, and happened during rush hour. Ariel, good morning.
Yeah, good morning to you, Janae. That happened during rush hour. Just to set the scene, that packed subway car full of passengers, when a fight broke out, it escalated into gunfire, causing chaos and panic, and much of that was caught on camera.
This morning, harrowing cell phone video capturing rush hour mayhem as gunfire rang out in the New York City subway. Terrified passengers ducking for cover Thursday evening, huddled together, screaming in horror in this crowded downtown Brooklyn station.
Close the door! Close the door!
As I'm coming out, you hear pops, like 3 or 4 shots, pop, pop, pop. Then the doors open, everybody come flying out.
Police say chaos erupted around 5 p.m. after a fight on a train car. Passengers seen here trying to break up the situation, but the altercation only escalating.
He then took that firearm, started walking toward the 32-year-old who was on the train, yelling at him, walking toward him in a menacing way.
The 32-year-old man grabbing the weapon, shooting his attacker in the head.
Shots fired in transit, active shooter, 10-10 shots fired in transit.
This video showing the wounded man taken away on a stretcher, rushed to a nearby hospital in critical condition.
And within seconds, officers flooding into the station, arresting a suspect. But this terrifying incident happening just days after Governor Kathy Hochul sent the National Guard into the subway system to patrol here amid a 13% increase in subway crimes so far this year. Whit?
Truly a frightening scene. Ariel, thank you.
Now, according to reports, a 36-year-old black man allegedly got on an A train by beating the fare by walking through the emergency exit in that station. And after walking through that emergency exit and not paying the fare, this 36-year-old black man decided to get on an A train, and as he was riding on the A train, he started getting in the faces of people on that train, talking a lot of crap. And as he talked a lot of crap, he got in the face of a 32-year-old man and his female companion. And as he got in the face of that 32-year-old man and his female companion, what this 36-year-old black man did was escalate things into an argument. And as he escalated things into an argument, this eventually escalated into an altercation where the companion was riding with the 32-year-old man felt his life was in danger, and because she felt like her companion's life was in danger, she pulled a knife and stabbed the 36-year-old black man. And after stabbing the 36-year-old black man, he basically further escalated the situation because he was caught up in his feelings. And as he was caught up in his feelings, what this man did was go into his jacket that he had recently discarded as he started this fight. And as he went into his jacket, he pulled out a firearm. And as he pulled the firearm, he then looked to try to use it on the man. And the man possibly wound up disarming the individual, and in an effort to try to defend himself, wound up shooting this 36-year-old black man in the head. Now, this entire incident basically took place on this A train after New York Governor Kathy Hochul decided to put National Guardsmen into New York City subway stations to search bags, and New York Mayor Eric Adams escalated a police presence in most New York City subway stations, also looking to have cops go out here and search bags. Now, this entire incident shows how those policies have completely failed, and the reason why those policies have completely failed is because what we saw on that train is not something you can go out here and put a band-aid on as related to this bullet wound that I call the man crisis in my book, The Man Crisis, because what happened on that train is a textbook example of what happens when you have children of the corn who grow up to become men in crisis. What happens is you get an extremely dysfunctional male who does not know how to be able to function in basic life situations. That's what happened here with this 36-year-old man. This 36-year-old man is a textbook example of the kind of beta male that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis, and he basically was participating in the kind of dysfunctional behavior that the late David Carroll tried to warn us about in many of his classic masterpiece videos. Now, what we saw on that A train is a textbook example of what I call hyper-masculine behavior, and this hyper-masculine behavior is the result of a male who has been raised by a single mother and is insecure about his own natural masculinity and his own natural manhood. And because he's insecure and feels inadequate about his masculinity and his manhood, what he does is look to go out here and try to find ways to try to validate his own masculinity by going and looking to start fights. And that's basically what this guy was looking to do on that A train. This is a kind of behavior I saw way back when I was a preteen and a teenager in places like IS 148 and Park West High School. What these guys look to do is they look to go out here and call themselves flexing in an effort to be tough, and they will talk a lot of smack, not understanding that in this world, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And oftentimes, this is what happens is when your mouth writes a check, what will happen is if your ass can't cash it, what will happen is you will wind up defaulting and winding up in a bad way. And that's what happened to this 36-year-old man. He basically went out here trying to put up this hyper-masculine facade to cover up his insecurities. And as he looked to cover up his insecurities by trying to flex on that train, he basically started a fight with the wrong one. And as he started this fight with the wrong one, this is where the woman stepped in and stabbed him in the back to protect her companion that she was with. And then he, in an effort after being emasculated on that train, then went to go get his 9mm of courage. And after going to get his 9mm of courage, what he wanted to do is call himself looking to try to shoot this dude after winding up being emasculated by this woman. And what happened was he further got emasculated because this man disarmed him. And after this man disarmed him, he then defended himself by shooting this guy in the head. And after shooting him in the head, this guy basically learned how to fuck around and find out. That's what we saw on that train, because what you saw there was a textbook example of beta male behavior. Because with beta males, what they do is they wind up going out here, they have the emotions of a woman, but they have the physicality of a man. And that's basically what makes these beta males extremely dangerous, because these men, they are all emotional, they're all in their feelings, and they're insecure in their feelings. And because they are insecure in their feelings, they're always looking to try to prove their masculinity to other people. But the sad part is that these males never can prove their masculinity to themselves, because they're not secure about their masculinity, because they don't feel like they have any power, usually because these guys are raised by single mothers, and because they see single mothers having all the power, that makes them feel inadequate as men, and that's what leads to them looking to go on places like this A train, trying to overcompensate by showing how tough they are, and really showing us all how much of a bitch they are, because they gotta go on a train looking for a fight instead of looking to get where they want to go. Now, this whole situation with this dude is a very troubling one, because not only is it a troubling one because it was a violent incident that happened on that train, but it happened basically because we have beta males and feminist indoctrinated women in the leadership here in New York. Their policies basically created this dysfunctional situation on that A train. Now, New York Mayor Eric Adams and Governor Kathy Hochul, they've been trying to say that they want to try to get the crime under control in the subways. Unfortunately, because they don't want to concede that the policies of the previous administrations of Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo are complete failures, they continue to try to overcompensate by going on this approach by thinking, oh, we can bring National Guardsmen into the train stations to search bags and have police search bags. But in this case, this man had no bag at all as related to this violent altercation that took place on the subway. No, this man had no bag whatsoever in his person and wasn't looking to carry a weapon in a bag, because when it comes to these types of individuals, they are insecure, so they keep their weapon on their person. And because they keep their weapon on their person, you could go out here and profile this guy by going through a bag, but you're not going to get anywhere with that dude. Now, there are some of these politicians who want to continue to escalate things by saying we want to put metal detectors in subways, but that's not going to stop these kinds of individuals. No, these individuals are not going to be stopped by metal detectors, because you cannot put metal detectors in over 475 stations, just like you cannot put National Guardsmen in over 460 stations. I mean, I got it mixed up with the 475, but over 460 stations where over 10 million people basically are riding these trains almost every day. I mean, you have some people say 3 million people, but I say usually it's millions of people riding these trains, and there's no way you can go out here and foster security in those trains by putting metal detectors in them, because what will happen is you're just going to wind up with a backlog of people, and that's going to disrupt the flow of people being able to participate in commerce in this city. So the whole approach to crime fighting, which is basically done to try to maintain the policies of guys like Andrew Cuomo and Bill de Blasio, who were the mayor and governor of New York, and the people running the state legislature like Andrea Stewart Cousins and Carl Heastie, who created dysfunctional policies like the bail reform policies that are just destroying the quality of life here in New York. These policies are proving to be complete failures ever since their implementation. But you can't explain that to these members of the Blue Party, who are too proud to admit when they're wrong, and that's a textbook beta male and feminist trait. They refuse to admit when they've made a mistake, because when it comes to women, as part of their female nature, like Kathy Hochul, they don't want to admit when they're wrong. And when it comes to beta males like Eric Adams, who follow instead of lead, they never want to concede that something doesn't work, and that's why we've got chaos in the subways instead of people being able to travel to and fro in the city safely, because these politicians don't want to go out here and admit that the bail reform policies that they put in place in 2019 are complete failures, because without that boundary of bail to ensure that people do return to court for their court date, what we have is a revolving door, and that revolving door basically enables individuals like this 36-year-old man to just basically go out here and participate in a series of misdemeanors like fare beating, and then walk through that revolving door. And as they walk through that revolving door at central booking, what those individuals do is feel emboldened, and as they feel emboldened, what they do is look to participate in escalating their criminal behavior. That's what happens with beta males when you don't give them boundaries. What they do is look to escalate their behavior into going from participating in misdemeanors to going out here and participating in felonies. That's what happens when you're dealing with a dysfunctional beta male. What they will look to do is escalate their behavior because they understand nobody is setting a boundary. And with New York City's whole dysfunctional government, from the governor's office to the state legislature to New York City's government with the mayor and the city council, many of these leftists just don't want to admit their whole approach to crime fighting is a failure, and it's a failure because you're trying to go out here and give a child of the corn a chance, when the problem is that the child of the corn doesn't understand about the basics as related to functioning in society due to the dysfunctional way they have been raised by their single mother. Now, this whole bail reform thing came about as related to the death of Kalief Browder, the death of Kalief Browder that happened because he was arrested for allegedly stealing a backpack and spent 3 years in Rikers Island, and spent those 3 years in Rikers Island not because of him not getting cash bail, but because of a prosecutor not looking to take his case seriously, because according to New York state law, a person is supposed to be taken to have their day in court in 180 days, and the Bronx prosecutor's office didn't go and look to deal with this case in 180 days. No, they kept putting motions to keep this case going and left this boy in the Rikers Island for 3 years, and as a result, he endured so much trauma that once he did get his day in court 3 years later, due to the backlog established by Bronx DA at the time, Robert Johnson, what happened was this boy wound up committing suicide. And as these members of the Blue Party, like Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo, got embarrassed, what they did was overcompensate with the help of Andrea Stewart Cousins and Carl Heastie to create this bail reform law, which is turning out to be the New York State version of a disaster worse than prohibition. And it's worse than prohibition because basically, like prohibition, you're giving many of these people who are criminals and possible criminals opportunities to believe that they don't need to respect the laws of New York State and New York City, because this bail reform law basically is opening a revolving door for those criminals to go through. And instead of conceding their position, Andrea Stewart Cousins and Carl Heastie and the members of the overall blue state legislature refuse to concede their position and admit that this law is a failure. What they want to do is continue to think that they can overcompensate by escalating things as related to empty symbolic security, such as going to do bag checks, but bag checks don't work in a subway station with over 460 to 469 stations. No, you don't have the manpower to be able to check everybody's bag in a city of not 7 to 9 to 10 million people. That's just not possible. And the sad part is that these politicians, again, are too proud to admit when they're wrong, and too proud to admit they're wrong. And that's what's leading to the fall of New York City, because you have individuals who just don't want to admit that this policy is creating chaos. And it's creating chaos because this is not the approach to deal with individuals who are allegedly arrested for committing crimes. You have to set a hard boundary, and the only way to do that is to repeal this bail reform law, which is again proven to be a certified failure all across the state, because in Long Island we have people who participated in a possible murder and the dismemberment of two bodies, basically on house arrest. And we have them on house arrest after participating in this gruesome crime because the bail reform law says that that crime isn't a serious felony where somebody needs cash bail and is not really a flight risk. Again, the policy in and of itself is a complete failure, but instead of admitting that they're wrong, Eric Adams and Kathy Hochul continue to try to put this Band-Aid on this bullet wound where we see that the crime continues to get worse in the face of these National Guard soldiers who really can't protect anyone unless you give us the tools to do it. I mean, you need to have prosecutors who are effective about going out here and prosecuting individuals to set that boundary. That's part of what you need in order to be able to stop the crime going on in the subways. You need a prosecutor who's going to be hard on crime, not somebody like that pathetic Alvin Bragg in Manhattan who wants to go out here and give passes to people who commit felonies, all the while looking to go out here and look to clout chase by going after actors like Jonathan Majors on misdemeanors. I mean, he went hard after Jonathan Majors, an actor who was fleeing the scene of a domestic violence incident. But when it comes to people who are committing heinous crimes, like the one that was in that train station, he was looking to do nothing about it. And many of the other prosecutors, they have been shamed, like in Brooklyn. I mean, it's an embarrassment that this man was arrested for defending himself from a man who instigated an incident, a man who wound up instigating this incident because he basically was one of these children of the corn who grew up in a single mother household and learned no proper male life skills or male survival skills. And now that man is wreaking havoc and causing a crisis on an A train that basically was recorded and had lots of folks terrified on that A train. And that really wasn't going to make people feel safe about taking a train here in New York City. No, it wasn't going to make people feel safe about taking a train here in New York City. They weren't going to feel safe about taking that train because you're dealing with a situation with an individual who just is not someone who can function. And the sad part about this thing for Kathy Hochul and Eric Adams, they don't understand the dire situation as related to the man crisis in this country. No, the dire situation as related to the man crisis in this country is that that one guy in that incident is only one of over 100 million dysfunctional beta males who have been growing up to become children of the corn due to the way we have been raising children in this country. No, what we're seeing is we're reaping what we sowed as related to the feminist movement of the 1960s, which told us that a woman could, on her own, could raise a boy to become a man. But what we saw on that video was a man who didn't have any proper male life skills, had no understanding of critical thinking, no understanding of logic and reason, no understanding of these things, and was insecure in his own masculinity to the point where he not only put the lives of other people in jeopardy, he wound up putting his own life in jeopardy. And if he does survive, he's basically either going to go to the penitentiary to wind up dealing with Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles, who will basically go out here and turn him out by going into the front side and the back side, trading him for Little Debbie snack cakes, ramen noodles, packets of Crystal Light lemonade, packets of Crystal Light tea, off-brand Oreo cookies, off-brand lemon cookies, off-brand duplex cookies, sugar wafers, Hunt snack pack pudding, honey buns, off-brand fruit punch. I mean, this dude is going to go from being on that train free to being in that penitentiary with these dudes, basically spit roasting him and turning him out. And then Mr. Sprinkles will spray the special sauce on the backside, making it look like the inside of a glazed donut. That is the final fate for this dude once they get him out the hospital, if he survives. Or, in the extreme case, this dude may wind up dead, but he's going to wind up dead because he never got the life skills of a man. And as a result, this man just again doesn't know how to function, like many of these males don't know how to function. And again, the only way you can deal with these kinds of males is by setting boundaries. Unfortunately, those on the left, they don't understand how to set boundaries. That's why they go to these crazy extremes of thinking National Guard can stop this. No, National Guard can't stop this. You have to swallow your pride, concede your position, and roll back those bail reform laws and let these males know what a boundary is as related to accountability and responsibility. That is the only way you can deal with these kinds of males, because if you don't set boundaries with these males at the front line as related to them understanding consequences, what they will do is again feel emboldened to escalate their behavior. And as they escalate their behavior from misdemeanors like fare beating to felonies like assault and battery, which is what happened to that unfortunate passenger who was riding that train trying to just get where they wanted to go. And that's what turned that whole situation into a assault and battery and led to this man winding up getting himself shot in the head, because this man didn't understand that part of manhood is understanding that you don't go out here running your mouth, making checks that your ass can't cash, and you don't go out here starting situations with people when you're on a train, because you may run into the wrong one. And if you run into the wrong one, what will happen is you will wind up on a stretcher or in a body bag. And that's sadly what happened here with this dude. I mean, he didn't get the proper male life skills or male survival skills to understand that you don't go out here starting nothing that you can't finish. And just because you got 9mm of courage don't mean that you're confident. No, it just shows how this dude reeked of insecurity. And this whole situation, again, shows the complete failure of beta males on that train and in the mayor's in the Gracie Mansion and the City Hall, and also shows us the failure of beta males in the state legislature like Carl Heastie. I mean, it shows us the complete failure of beta males and feminist indoctrinated women, and how they've turned a safe New York City under Rudy Giuliani into a city that's basically in chaos, and subways that aren't safe even with military presence, because a military presence isn't going to make anybody safe unless there are consequences. And that's the dot that hasn't been connected by Eric Adams and Kathy Hochul, who think, oh, I can search a bag and stop someone, I can use a metal detector and stop someone. Well, we got folks who use tools, who go and do construction. You're gonna stop everyone like that? Critical question I gotta ask, because the policies show me how both Eric Adams and Kathy Hochul have failed New York City, and what really is the result of that failure really are the folks in New York City who are so caught up in their feelings about Donald Trump that they can't see that the policies of these blue politicians, which are done as a way to spite Donald Trump, are hurting them, and continue to vote for these kind of candidates who don't really want to understand that they are going to lose an election if they don't concede their position, and may even lose anyway because they continue to hold a position that basically puts an entire city in crisis. Because if people can't ride the subway to work and feel safe, then your city is basically on the road to a decline worse than that of the 1980s. And I grew up in New York in the 1980s, and I can tell you how much of a hellhole it was almost 40 years ago. And sadly, it's even worse at this point, because while Ed Koch was tone deaf and David Dinkins was disconnected, we have Eric Adams and Kathy Hochul basically showing how they just have no idea what's going on as related to solving the problem. And again, all because of pride. They want to sit there and say, oh, we need to help black and brown people. Well, how does it help black and brown people when you have a black man attacking a brown man on a train? I mean, how does it help good brothers and sisters out here who are looking to just get to work and come home when you have policies that are basically aren't helping those black and brown people who are out here doing what's right? I mean, critical question I gotta ask Eric Adams, Kathy Hochul, Carl Heastie, and Andrea Stewart Cousins. How does it help all of those black and brown people if you create a revolving door for Pookie and Ray Ray and Sharkeisha? I mean, you are not helping anyone. You're just enabling dysfunction and too proud to admit that the policies by paternalists like Andrew Cuomo and Bill de Blasio are complete failures. And these policies, again, don't give Pookie a chance. No, they just give him an opportunity to take advantage of naive leftists who don't understand that when it comes to these types of individuals, they take advantage of a situation. And while I really feel bad for Kalief Browder and the tragedy that happened as related to the injustice, this is not really helping kids like Kalief Browder, because Kalief Browder could have easily been helped by the prosecutor's office of Robert Johnson by just getting his case to court trial at 180 days, or a DA basically showing some understanding of law to say, hey, there's not enough evidence here. We need to kick this individual within 7 or 8 days. But the DA didn't do their job, and instead of admitting where you made your mistakes and taking responsibility for those mistakes, what we have is chaos in the subway as related to more of these children of the corn who continue to push boundaries because we don't have strong leadership. And we don't have strong leadership because we have a group of men who are beta males running New York State and feminists running New York State, and they basically have made New York City into a city in crisis. Now, if you want to learn more about what leads to beta males becoming dysfunctional like this and out of control, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and you can find it at big box retailers like Walmart and Target. Now, this video will not be monetized, so I'm asking everybody to drop a donation to the Cash App or the PayPal by clicking the links in the description box, because that helps me stay on the air to continue to report on horrific stories as related to the man crisis like this. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Coming to paperback and e-readers, Isis Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Isis Dark Incubus at Amazon.com and other online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback. From the author of the critically acclaimed book, The Man Crisis, comes The Woman Crisis. Learn why so many women have become lost in their quest to have it all in The Woman Crisis. Get your copy of The Woman Crisis in paperback at Amazon.com and online booksellers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.